Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where every day I beam your ears to a different part of the world and share inspirational stories of how technology is transforming our life, work, entire industries, and even world. And I have an amazing story for you all today because I've recently met a great guy who's coming armed with a few stories that I guarantee will stay with you forever. His name is Peter Coppinger. He's CEO and co-founder of Teamwork.com. And he's going to be joining me on here to share his inspirational story. And I'm also looking forward to learning more about Teamwork, which I believe is the only scalable project management platform built for client work and founded by former agency owners. And we're also going to learn more about how you and your agency can get super organized and use technology to unlock growth. And if you're a startup founder, there is a fantastic startup story at the heart of this, especially around bootstrapping. But I don't want to reveal any spoilers, so buckle up and hold on tight because I'm going to beam your ears all the way to Cork in Ireland, where Peter is waiting to share his story. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Peter. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me on the show. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of a little company called Teamwork.com. And at Teamwork, we're on a mission to make client work teams everywhere efficient, organized, profitable, and happy. And client service teams are basically any company or internal team that delivers projects for a customer or charges by the hour for work. So it's a huge category and it includes professional services and agencies of all types. And essentially what we do is we provide a software platform with everything a client work company needs in one place to win sales, to complete projects on time and budget, to coordinate with your clients, we provide help desk, we help you manage your retainer work, and then we have a system to help you get super organized and profitable. And then we don't just provide the software, we actually used to run an agency for 10 years. So we provide real hands-on practical advice and training on how to use the software with a deliberate plan, step by step, on how to scale up. Today, we've 20,000 customers worldwide, and we were bootstrapped up until last year, actually, where we took on 70 million funding for the first time in our history, so that we can really fulfill our vision, I suppose, to become the category leader in the space.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. But before we find out more about Teamwork, I'm going to take you way back, even before Teamwork. I mean, can you remember where your passion for tech came from, the moment that put you on the path you're on today? Or ultimately, what is your origin story?
Thanks. That's an interesting one. All right, I have to admit, first of all, that I'm a nerd, hardcore nerd. I still am. I still love programming. Even though I have lots of other things to do, every now and again I will still dabble and try and help out with our product. So does my co-founder. I suppose it all goes back to when I was 8 years old. My cousins had a computer and I was fascinated. And for Christmas one year, myself and my two sisters got a Commodore 64, which my two sisters were not impressed with. So it became my Commodore 64. And what was great back then is the computer came with a built-in programming language ready for you to go, and it came with a manual. And I used that manual to teach myself programming. I just fell in love with the art of programming, made loads of games. I thought I was going to go down a career of making games. That's what I wanted to do. But apparently we were told that there was no money in games back then, right? Which has turned out to be completely untrue. But it was interesting. In college, I met my co-founder, Dan, and this thing called the internet was just taking off and nobody quite knew what it was. But my co-founder, Dan, and I went around to every local business trying to sell them websites. And they were often asking us, what is a website? And we had to first explain what that was. But that led us to dropping out of college and creating a software consultancy that ultimately led us on this path.
Wow, what an amazing story. And I've lost count of the amount of times I've said this, but in over, 2,000 interviews, the amount of people that I've asked that question and they say, Commodore 64. Who would have thought that machine now with 64K of RAM will shape so many careers? It's phenomenal, isn't it?
It was amazing. I think what it was, like you could, when you got bored with a couple of games you got with it, there was this white manual and you typed in a couple of lines of code and magic happened on the screen. Just ball bounced around the screen. I remember just being blown away that I wrote these 8 lines of code and it made this magic happen on the screen, and just being fascinated by that and really digging in and understanding what was going on.
8 lines of code, man. I started with 10, was it 10 print, Neil is cool, and then 20, go to 10 in any supermarket.
Yeah. I remember that. Your name went up the screen. And if you added a semicolon, your name went kind of across the screen.
Yeah. But of course, it was that path that would lead you to Teamwork, which, as you said, is a scalable project management platform built for client work and founded by former agency owners. But can you tell me a bit more about the story behind the company and those problems that you set out to solve? Because it feels like it all began in your previous life as agency owners, right?
Yeah, it did. Exactly, Neil. So, right, we dropped out of college back in 1999, and the internet thing was taking off, and we were incredibly excited, but we really didn't know what we were doing. We had no idea how to run a business. We had no idea how to do invoicing. We had no idea how to do stage payments, negotiation, business. We just knew that we loved tech. But it was a really good place to really hone your skills. You know, for years we wisened up. We learned how to negotiate. We learned how to pitch for work. We learned how to get bigger and bigger deals. We learned how to take stage payments instead of waiting till the end of the project and get the payment in one go. And sometimes that would drag on for months. To manage cash flow, to issue invoices on time, to focus on the type of work that we were best at, that was the most profitable, that we could really scale at. So we ended up getting to a place where we had a thriving agency. First of all, we made every mistake in the book, but we wisened up and we ended up having a thriving agency. About 40 people, a few consultants, doing hundreds of projects for large companies like Pfizer, Lilly, and so on. A lot of big pharmaceuticals in Ireland that we got into. And as we scaled up, we ultimately found that we really had difficulty managing everything. There was just so much going on. There's projects, there's invoices, there's time logs, there's workload rates, deadlines, there's new staff, there's systems to follow. It just was really difficult to scale. And there's just too much manual work in particular going on with all these projects, and just seeing the big picture and managing the client communication was a big part of that. And we also found that we were really generous with our time, but we weren't charging for every billable minute. Mm. And it got to the point where we were exhausted and we were nearly going to pack this in. We tried every product out there to help us manage our company. And nothing worked because nothing was built for client work companies like us. And a couple of products for time tracking and project management and so on were very basic and very brittle, and you couldn't get them to work together. So one day we were trying out Basecamp. We'd been using it for a couple of weeks, and I had just personally got some terrible customer support from them. Mm. And we prided ourselves on amazing customer support. We always went the extra miles for our customer, and I was just flabbergasted at the response I got. And we just said, that's it. I came in one Monday morning for coffee with Dan. I said, hey, I've been thinking we build better products than these things we're using for our customers all the time. I think it's time we got out of the consultancy world and we made a product to really take on these guys and give the world what it needs.
Wow, that must have been quite scary and daunting back then, right?
No, because we had built hundreds and hundreds of more complicated apps for our customers. So it wasn't scary at all. That probably the biggest challenge actually was finding time, because we had an agency with 30, 40 people, with hundreds of projects, with loads of clients, loads of deadlines. Where were we ever going to find time to work on our own ideas? And what we did eventually, after months of getting nowhere, is we said, all right, every Friday, there's going to be a handful of us and we're going to work on our own products. We're going to treat ourselves like one of our clients. Mm. So we'd work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday'd roll around. We'd be all excited about what we built. Then we'd do client work for the next 4 days. Then we'd go back to building our product. And we could start using our product as soon as we had something basic working. We were able to be our own. We were able to dog food our own product and make it better and better. And then October 4th, 2007, we finally put this thing on the internet. We got our first couple of customers the next day. Magically, somebody found us on page 20 of Google, I think. And the beautiful thing, it might have been $50 revenue, $50 a month, our first sale, but it's recurring revenue and it compounds and it builds over time. And it eventually got to the point where we had more revenue coming in from our site product than we had from our consultancy. And I should say as well, we used to have, every time we got a sale in the early days, within our office, we had hooked up to a speaker that every time we got a sale, we'd Homer Simpson go, pizza money.
That reminds me of, was it an episode of Silicon Valley? I don't know if you watch it, whenever Bitcoin went up in price as a Napalm Death song came on.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was reminding me of it. Yeah, exactly. That's a great show, by the way. It's so funny.
Yeah.
But eventually pizza money was happening like 20 times a day and it was getting too frequent and our customers in the office were asking what's going on. We tried running both the consultancy and the software business in parallel, but eventually we just got to the point where we're like, we can't do both. It's too hard. So we gifted our consultancy away for free to another agency that we really liked, and they did a great job of looking after our customers.
And you said a few moments ago that you bootstrapped your way to success, got huge funding there. Was that a conscious decision from the beginning that you wanted to bootstrap the whole way?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
this is going back a while, right? Back then, it wasn't in the stratosphere. It wasn't a big thing for companies to raise money. There seems to be a concept right now that you can't start a company without raising money, which I think is completely wrong. It's actually never been easier to bootstrap a company. But we were lucky that we had the agency. And I suppose with the agency, we learned over the years to be very frugal and careful with our money and careful with expanding. And we actually probably were a bit cautious with the product. I mean, we waited until we had more money coming from our product than from our agency by a big factor before we went all in. But yeah, we were quite lucky. And I'd actually recommend that model if people are, thinking about creating a company. Going the consultancy route, consultancy is always in demand. You can niche down. It's a really good way to hone your skills, and then you can build a product on the side.
And as a geeky, nerdy guy myself, as soon as I heard about Teamwork, the first thing I thought was that domain name's going to be expensive. And then I read that you actually brought that name back for something like $670,000. I feel there's got to be a story there, right? Can you expand on what happened?
Neil, it's interesting, right? So when we launched the product, we always wanted it to be called Teamwork. It just felt right to us. But we couldn't get Teamwork, of course. There was a domain squatter sitting on the name. So the best name we could get was teamworkpm.net.
Right.
So a complete unholy mouthful, just awful domain name, right? And we still managed to get a bit of traction with our product and to grow at a decent rate. But we always felt that if we could just get a better name, teamwork.com, we would be onto a winner. So every now and again, my co-founder and I would send an email to the person registered as owning the domain name at teamwork.com. And we would typically just get a one word and a link reply. So just an email back with just a link. And it was like, look at this. And we'd follow the link. And it took us to a web page that listed the sale price of 20 or 30 one-word domains like insure.com, sex.com, and so on. And typically they were selling for anywhere between 20 million and 100 million for one-word domain names. But this is in the 90s when things were just crazy. And it was the squatter's way of just telling us, just go away. You can't afford this domain. But, one night I found myself in the pub, of course, and the friend I was with at the time went to the bathroom. And for some random reason on a Friday night in the pub, it popped into my head that I'd offered this guy who owns the domain name $50,000.
Yeah.
So I sent an email and I said, final offer, $50,000, last offer. And within 30 seconds, I was shocked that I got a reply back with 3 words. Same lowball offer. And that got me a bit mad. And I said, come on, man, for beep's sake, give me a real price. And the guy shot back an email with another 3 words saying, I'd consider $675,000. So I converted that to euro and it was exactly 500,000 euro, $500,000. And I checked our bank balance and we had exactly $532,000 in the bank account. I thought about it for about 5 seconds and I replied back, sold. No. Just let me consult my board as if we had a board. And then it took me 2 days. I remember calling my now wife at the time and telling her what I'd done, and she thought I was crazy. But I remember coming home from work the next day, and she asked me, "Well, did you tell your co-founder what you just did?" I couldn't. Told him I couldn't build up the courage. Told her I couldn't build up the courage. So I was determined on the second day. I got my co-founder and I told him that we have an offer, not that I'd done it already, to buy this domain name. And I was prepared for his answer. He can be pretty cautious. He was saying, "Oh no, look, it's all our money. We're too small. Maybe down the line, maybe in a couple of years." But I pulled out my secret weapon that I was ready with, my Martin Luther King speech. I have a dream. Look, and I said, "Look, we can always make more money, but I do not want us looking back in 20 years' time with regret." And he looked me in the eye and said, "Let's do it." Whoa. And we purchased teamwork.com for every penny we had. We launched it 2 months later in January. And the amazing thing is, instantly our sales skyrocketed.
Man, there's got to be startup founders listening all over the world. You just made the hairs on the back of their neck stand up. What a powerful story. I mean, it equally could have gone the other way, but it really paid off for you guys, right?
It did. I suppose we were lucky that we had enough money coming in every month to cover our expenses.
Yeah.
So worst case scenario, we would have just been burning 500,000. We still would have had enough coming in. But yeah, we'd always been pretty frugal with our spending up to this point.
Wow, I love that. And fast forward to 2022 then. People are listening, they've heard about the backstory, about teamwork, I bought that domain. Yep. How does it work? Can you walk me through how it works and maybe provide a use case or client story just so listeners can understand how it might work in their world?
Yeah, so there's a million project management apps, as you know. There's new ones every day, and there's new ones in flavor this year, and next year it'll be some other app, right? So it's an incredibly crowded space. But what we do is we provide the project management, but we also provide, on top of that, all the tools you need to really scale your agency. So everything in one place. Mm-hmm. So because we ran an agency for 10 years and we made all the mistakes, we really understand client work companies. And most client work companies, even the big ones, have the typical pain points that I mentioned earlier. They've difficulty managing everything. They can't see the big picture. There's too much manual work. There's money slipping through the cracks. And they're using multiple software tools, sometimes multiple project management tools. They're integrated really poorly, and they don't really help with the scale challenge. And it's just chaos. So at Teamwork, we provide a platform where we help you with the project management work, of course. That's kind of table stakes. But we actually have a plan for your success, and we call it Deliver, Grow, Scale. So we take you on a journey. So Deliver is all about just get the projects done, deliver client work on time, track all your time, and stop letting money slip through the cracks. So we start there, the basics. That's pretty easy. The next, it gets more interesting now. The growth stage is about getting super organized and streamlined. We have this templates feature, which is kind of the real secret weapon to getting organized. We have decentralized client communication. We have a health report for seeing the big picture of all the projects and managing the projects from this kind of one area. At this stage, you should have project managers helping you kind of scale up your business. And we have a team utilization report to make sure that every last one of your people that should be working on client projects is spending at least 70 to 75% of their time actually working on client projects. And then once you master that, we bring you onto a category we call Scale, where it's really about managing your profits, building a kind of comprehensive platform where you have everything you need to manage sales, help desk, manage the client communication, manage your knowledge base, and just tie everything together so you are like incredibly streamlined. So we have on our website, we've loads of examples of companies that have gone through this journey. Most of our customers are coming, by the way, across from using existing project management tools like ClickUp, Monday, Asana, or one of the millions of them out there, but they're still drowning in the chaos. Now, a really good example would be one of the case studies on our website, and there's a video with it. Really good guy, Kafir Pravda in Israel. He runs a company called Pravda Media Group, and they're getting pretty big. And he has a really good example of how they were using Basecamp, and it was chaotic, and they were inefficient and disorganized. They moved over to Teamwork, and within a year, they, by his account, said they are over 40% more productive. Wow. And they're just able to scale, and they're confident. And I love that he's got a couple of lines in the case study there. One of the lines I really like is that he calls Teamwork the operating system of their company. And he says that Teamwork is the single source of truth in their business. It allows them to innovate quickly, map out all their business processes, which shortens their time to revenue.
Fantastic. And I'm going to have to pull you up on something here. You made a Freudian slip a few moments ago when you said money falling through the Crocs. Do you own a pair of Crocs? I've got to ask.
Cracks. Actually, there is another case study on the website. I was just thinking there, Neil. There's a company, Liberty Marketing in Wales, which is probably a bit closer to home for you. Yeah. I think they're the biggest marketing agency in Wales, certainly. But they have a case study on their website where they talk about, again, they were using other products, and it was chaotic, but about how teamwork helps them manage all the recurring tasks and the retainer work, which when you're using generic project management apps, they're just not designed with that concept in mind at all. And she says that in the case study, I think she says that if you compare where we are now to where we were a few years ago, thanks to teamwork, it's like a different business. Which I love hearing that. I get such a kick out of really helping client work companies that were kind of struggling with the workload, just like we were, to be able to scale. And actually, the example I always love to give is, when things are chaotic and you're the owner of a client work business or the project manager or the head of operations, and you go on holidays, you have to bring your laptop with you. You're checking in all the time. You're checking in the status of all these projects. And what success really looks like is that your business is so efficient that you can go on holidays, close the laptop, not check in at the office, and know that everything's running like clockwork. That's what it's all about.
Love that. And of course, we're going to have a lot of people listening around the world now. You've captured their imagination. They're walking into the office maybe thinking, I need to mention this to people. I'm quite excited, feel a little bit inspired. I listened to this podcast earlier, and they're going to come across an IT guy or an IT director who's going to start asking questions about technology, implementation plans, all that stuff. So can you tell me more about the tech that makes it all possible?
Yeah, I can. So we're hosted in the cloud, of course. We have enterprise versions and we've scaled versions. There's a whole bunch of technology going on behind the scenes to make it all work together seamlessly. So we're hosted with AWS. We give you the choice of, do you want to be hosted in Europe? Do you want to be hosted in America? Or do you want to be hosted in Australia? So we can provide pretty good options there to everyone. You can have your private enterprise secured database that only you have access to, and you hold your security keys for that, which is something not offered that much. Then behind the scenes, there's a world of technology going on. There's MariaDB databases. There's something called RabbitMQ messaging services, Kubernetes, containerized applications. We use Golang, which is an amazing language from Google. We use Vue.js, Node.js, Redis, Elasticsearch, MongoDB, and millions more things. But ultimately, it adds up to a seamless experience. We also have some of the biggest companies in the world trusting us, including Disney. And, they really make sure that we are a super secure platform. So we have our own security penetration testing going on all the time. But in addition to that, some of our biggest customers contract third-party companies to check our security. And so our security is checked every single month, penetration tests, and we pass with flying colors.
Fantastic. And a question I've got to ask on behalf of everyone listening is, do you have any tips on how to get an agency super organized and use technology to unlock growth? Because this is the space that you live and breathe, right?
Yeah, you can imagine that I definitely do, because we absolutely made every single mistake. It got so bad at one point we considered packing in our agency, but then we wisened up. I'm actually in the middle of writing a book on this. And the book is going to have 3 chapters, Deliver, Grow, Scale, taking you on that journey so you can kind of dive into whatever works for you. But yeah, one of the biggest tips, and I alluded to this earlier on, is using templates or checklists to get super organized and unlock scale. So you can use templates for your client projects, but you can also use smaller templates for your recurring SOPs, right? So everything in your business should be in there as a template. So even things like onboarding and offboarding a new member of staff can be turned into templates. And it's really is the secret weapon to unlocking a well-run agency that thrives without your presence. And it also gives you incredible peace of mind that everything is just running smoothly. There's actually a great book called The Checklist Manifesto that explains why checklists are so important to any organization. I don't know if you've come across that, Neil, but it's really worth checking out. It transformed the medical industry, for example. They've checklists for everything. But it's incredible, super powerful, really is the secret ingredient allowing you to scale and to get organized. And I think in general, people kind of struggle. They get the concept, but they kind of struggle where to get started with checklists. So I always encourage people to start with a very basic, generic project template. And then a template for onboarding a new staff member. Like, what's the training? What are different things you want them to learn? A to B, A to Z. Start pretty simple. And then from there, you can just keep refining your templates all the time, identifying which new ones you need to add, spotting where you have bottlenecks in your projects. Where can you add baby step subtasks? Where can you add descriptions? Where can you add estimated time, sample files, and so on to streamline everything for you and for your clients? So the best run agencies that if we go into their accounts of Teamwork, when we have permission to go into their account, we can see that they'll have 20 project templates and they'll have sometimes 50 smaller SOP task list templates for just about every internal task in their business. And these guys are humming along and they have scaled incredibly completely as a result of running their business in templates.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for coming on, sharing your inspirational story of bootstrapping the $35 million without taking a dime, spending your last $500,000 on a domain name. That story will stick with me a long time after this podcast. But for startup founders listening at the very beginning of their journey, can you share a story and maybe offer any advice to a startup founder listening that might just inspire them to follow in your footsteps?
So many stories. I'm the armed police raided our office, but we won't tell that story, right? So and I mentioned this early on, but we were lucky that we had an agency that we were able to because we had the agency on the side, we were able to bootstrap our company. But I think nowadays I've developed an opinion on bootstrapping over the years. I basically think that if you're young and have no dependencies, you should absolutely bootstrap until you have product market fit and have a teachable sales pitch. Then you're ready for scale. Then it makes sense to take on investment and go hell for leather. And you'll end up retaining far more of your company equity this way. Because there's plenty of super successful companies where the founders got kicked out of their own company or where the founders' equity was diluted so much that they just didn't do that well out of it, or they end up basically having a boss, Whereas if you stay bootstrapped as long as you can, you'll end up in the majority position. You won't have a boss. You'll control your company. You'll have more equity. And you'll just be in more control as you scale. And it's never been easier to make software. It's certainly a lot cheaper than it was back when we started. I remember we had to pay $50,000 a year for our first server that we ran everything on. I mean, you can get hundreds of thousands worth of free credits from AWS and from Microsoft Azure now. There's loads of tutorials, advice, templates, guides, lots of goodwill out there. And just keep pivoting your idea. Pivot until you start getting traction and keep listening to your potential customers. There is this really interesting thing in startups that super smart people can't let go of a terrible idea. And we've probably all seen this all the time, right? So you should never blindly trust other people to validate your idea, because the guys who founded Airbnb were told their idea was terrible. The guys who founded Dropbox were told their ideas were terrible. Slack, they were told their idea was terrible. So only you can judge your own, what success looks like. But what I'd encourage any startup to do is give yourself a red line. Hey, if we don't get our first customer by Christmas, we're going to pivot to something else. If we can't get somebody in this industry to start paying us $100 a month by February, we're going to pivot and ask people, hey, what would you pay for? But yeah, super smart people can't let go of terrible ideas. The other thing then is, I really think you should bootstrap as long as you could. The only exception to that really is if your idea is a moonshot that is either going to work or completely flop and there's nothing in between, right? Or it needs an upfront investment in something like hardware or patents. Then, okay, fair enough, take on money. Or, this might be controversial, if you're over 40 and have dependencies, a mortgage, kids, whatever, I would absolutely encourage you to take money because you have less time to play with. But if you're under 40, you don't have dependencies, and it's a pure software play, bootstrap as long as you can. It's my advice.
Brilliant. Fantastic. And I'm also going to ask you to leave one other thing for everyone listening, and that is a book that maybe has inspired you or you've enjoyed reading recently that we can add to our Amazon wish list for listeners to check out. Is there anything that springs to mind that you would leave us with today? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Neil. There's a really fun book. I love the title. It's How to Castrate a Bull. Ouch. We're all crossing our legs, right? It's a really fun book. It's a story of NetApp and how they scaled and the challenges they went through. And
written by Dave Hitz, one of the first guys there. Just a real honest, fascinating story about their journey and how they didn't try to take on the market leader straight away. They built kind of cheaper, simpler product initially, got traction in that space, and then eventually took on the big boys. It's a fascinating book. I've loved every second of it, and it's just a good bit of fun as well.
Awesome. Well, I'll add that to the Amazon wish list so people can find it nice and easily. And to add to the show notes so people can find you or contact your team or find out more information, or maybe check out that video of the use case you mentioned. What's the best starting point for everything? Although you've kind of revealed this already with the domain name that you purchased. But we'll let you there.
So check out teamwork.com for our case studies and everything else. But yeah, if you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is always good. You'll find me instantly, Peter Coppinger. You can email me directly as well. My first name at teamwork.com. I'm IRL Topper, so IRLTOPPER on Twitter. And I really do love hearing from other scale-ups and startups. Happy to give advice. Trying to do what I can to help the ecosystem here in Ireland as well. So if you're listening from Ireland, absolutely love to help you create your SaaS company. And I'm super responsive. So don't be afraid to reach out.
Well, you've been on an incredible journey. And as I said, I've recorded over 2,000 interviews, but this is one of those stories that will stick with me long after the podcast. And I love what you're doing there, using technology and helping businesses deliver client work so they work smarter, not harder, by getting organized, managing all their work in one tool that scales as you grow. But as I said a few moments ago, it's the story behind it all that brings it all to life. So thank you for taking the time to share that with me today.
Cheers, Neil. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
One of the things I'm most passionate about with this podcast is getting to hear a different, inspiring story from anywhere in the world and share that voice and that story on here, but also just getting to speak with incredibly cool people that are achieving so much. Yes, you've guessed it. He's been added to my cool guys I want to have a beer with. There's just so many stories there, and I think we only scratched the surface, but that one about the domain name is something that will stick with me for a long time. But if you're a startup founder, if you've got a similar story to share or something resonated with you about today's episode, I want to hear from you. So please email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, just at Neil C. Hughes, and we'll keep this conversation going. And remember, if you need any help with ghostwriting your CEO or business blogs, or you want to launch your own podcast, and you'd like to work with me, just check out my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. But tomorrow, I'm going to return again with another cool story. But all that's left for me to say is thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.